welcome back, everyone. So our third speaker for today is Donata Columbro from Rome. Welcome.
Thanks.
How are you today?
I'm good. It's raining like hell, but it's okay.
Okay. Well, Donata is a journalist and co-founder of Data Ninja. She's also head of the Data Ninja School, the first school on data and data literacy in Italy. And in her speech today, she will talk about how to embrace the principle of data feminism to assure our data-driven projects are accessible and inclusive for all. The stage is all yours, Donata. Thank you.
Okay. May I share the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't see my slides moving on, just tell me, please. Don't let me speak forever. Okay, so you see my
Yes
moving.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you for the invitation and for the presentation. You already told something about myself. I'm a journalist, co-founder of Data Ninja, and what I like to say at the beginning of every presentation I make is that my background, my studies are not scientific studies because I went in Italy to I studied political science at the university. I wanted to work in southern countries with NGOs, doing development projects. So my background is more economic, but also from a humanist perspective. So my work with data didn't start as a job, actually, but I use data to improve my performance in running and also to improve my running schedule. This was 2014, actually, this screenshot. And actually it worked using data to improve my running habits. So this is me in New York doing the New York City Marathon in 2017. I had so much fun, and this is how I learned to deal with data at the beginning, actually. Then I started using data for activism. So since, as I told you, I studied political science and I started also working with NGOs, I wanted them to become more involved in the data collection they were doing in the developing countries. So in 2014, I organized the first hackathon about development and cooperation in Italy with the help of my colleagues of Data Ninja. And then I used data in the years after by using them to communicate activism actions. And also this is one of the latest campaigns I became an activist, which is called Dati Bene Comune. In that Bene Comune, we asked 1 year ago, actually, it's 1 year now, we are celebrating the birthday of this campaign. We asked the government to open the data of the pandemic. So this approach, it's something I think started my whole vision of data and passion about it. But also the way I approach data now in 2021 depends on those books I've read in the last 5 years. The first one is Dear Data by Giorgia Lupi and Saverin Posavec. I guess all of you know this kind of book. It was the book of their project of exchanging cards during 1 year. Each week, they were telling each other how they spent their week collecting data. For instance, how many times they watched TV or consumed media, how many times they crossed a door, how many times they said thank you or sorry to the people they met in the street. I think if you want to know the world of data, this book really gives you a perspective that is wide open and tells you quite everything about data. Because when reading their cards, the back of the cards where they explain how they collect those data, the difficulties, the problems, sometimes those cards were getting lost in the mail. This is something that help us understand that data are not something perfect or something that only technology could bring to us. The second book I have to mention here, and I'm going to mention it a lot during the presentation, is Data Feminism by Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren Klein, which are two teachers in MIT, teachers and journalists who have really deepen the topic of data feminism, on how feminism could improve the way we do data science and data visualization. And I think it's a book not for the general public, because it's very, very specific, but so helpful for all the people who deal with data. And you can also find it for free in the database of the MIT Press. So if you Google it right now, you're gonna find it. And the third book, which I always quote everywhere, it's Factfulness by Hans Rosling. Hans Rosling is no longer here anymore. He died a few years ago, and he would have been a gift for us to have him here to explain the data of the pandemic. He was a doctor, a person really excellent in explaining how data work. He used to talk about data in front of leaders of all over the world. And this book is really for everyone. I think that everybody who talks about data after Hans Rosling could never reach his ability to talk in front of anybody. But if I always say that if my mission is to bring Hans Rosling to the people, so it's okay. It doesn't matter if you read my book, if you do the Data Ninja school courses. If you read Hans Rosling, my job is done. I'm happy. So my way of seeing data really now is the result of my experience, as I told you before, and the reading of those books. My approach combines humanism. Data humanism is the approach of Giorgia Lupi. She also designed the manifesto of data humanism, and also human rights activism, because, as I told you, this was my path to arrive to where I am right now. So now I'm going to explain why, according to this approach, it's very useful if we start to add the word, the label feminist to our practices of data science or data design. It's very important to understand that feminism doesn't have to be only something related to women, or to only sex or gender discrimination. The kind of feminism I'm talking about is the intersectional feminism. It's very important to understand that. That's why I also talks about human rights. It's important to understand the concept of intersectionality. It means the cumulative manner in which the effects of different forms of discrimination can combine, overlap, and intersect in each other. Because right now, as I'm talking to you as a white woman born in Europe, I have a job. I have a house, so I also have some privilege. I cannot talk about discrimination that are not something I'm dealing with. For instance, discrimination about my race, my ethnicity, my ability. In the past, I dealt with that discrimination about my age, maybe, and I will deal with it in the future, about my sex, of course, about me being a mother. And sometimes all of those kind of discrimination combines. So it's very important to understand that. Discrimination, it's not doesn't exist in a bubble. Different kind of prejudice can be amplified when you put them together, and this is a fact. For instance, discrimination also in developing countries can be worse for women and also for women with disabilities. And women with disabilities that belongs to a specific ethnic group, for instance. Okay, this is to understand this concept of intersectionality. So what can we achieve by combining data and intersectional feminism? Why it's important? Now, so I'm quoting a lot from Data Feminism by Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren Klein. Data feminism is a way to examine and challenge power. This is something they say as the first principle of data feminism. So it begins by analyzing how power operates in the world. And this is important because we are going to see that data aren't neutral. So it's not something we can find outside as something given to us. No, data are produced. So we live in a system where there is power operating in the world. There are people with privilege, like me, as I said before, and other people with more privilege. And this is something that affects how we present data outside and how we use them. So who is doing data science right now? According to the data released by the US, so these are data relating to the US market, only 26% of those in computer and mathematical occupations are women. And all of those women, only 12% are Black or Latinx women, even though they are up to 22.5% of the US population. So we see we have a problem here. Even in the, if we take specific companies like Facebook and Google, people working in the artificial intelligence factor, there only 5% are women and 10% in Google. So I think this is something we cannot be blind about. It's something we need to consider when we see products and design created with data. Because we cannot think about data as something as objective and neutral. They are the product of our social context, and the context is made of relations we have with other people, of our history, of also of form of oppressions that exist in the society. We all have biases when we deal with the reality. Biases are like stereotypes, a way of seeing the reality around us according to our experience. And if we ask data to answer our questions and our questions are biased, the data will be biased too. So it's really, really important that we address bias in the data process. And if we are people with privilege, we have those biases are embedded in our privilege. One person that you may know, Joy Buglianwini, addressed these biases in algorithm. She found out while doing a research in the university that some software of facial recognition didn't recognize her face. Those software worked only when she put a white a mask on her. Now there's you can see her TED talk, but also a documentary in Netflix called Bias, which I recommend to you a lot. And she said in her TED talk that algorithm bias, like our human bias, results in fairness. But like viruses can be spread on a massive scale, because if we put data and we create algorithm with bias, it's really fast that those bias can be spread in the world, and they can lead to exclusionary experiences and discriminatory practices. So I tried to understand if we also have in Data Ninja a bias, a diversity and inclusion problem. I found out that we have. Those are data only from the last week, but I can say to you by my experience, also by using the public group of Data Ninja in Facebook, that the majority of people writing posts, asking questions, or posting links are male. So there's a problem of accessibility and also a problem of language, I think. So that's why I also put humanism in this perspective of data. It's really important to make data more human, because if we simplify our language, we will have more people, people who are always seen as outside of this kind of club of people dealing with data. We've seen the percentage of the people involved in data science in the US. They are not going to be involved in the conversation. So we tried to improve this kind of the language and our approach to data in the school we created, in our Data Ninja school platform. And the result, so we tried to embrace pluralism, which is one of the 7 principles of data feminism. Embrace pluralism in teaching data, which also means to use a simple language to talk about data, to explain everything, not to give anything by granted. So these are the data of the people who visited Data Ninja school and bought an online course the last year. We see that here we have the total amount. We can say it's we have reached a fair 50-50 if we see also the raw data here. So at least we've improved the percentage of women entering and the education in the educational field of data. And this is something we are proud of. But it's also important to apply data feminism in designing data. And now let's talk about accessibility and inclusion in this sector. We think that to do that, we need to embrace another principle of data feminism, which is elevate emotion and embodiment. How can we do that? The authors of data feminism says that emotive representations of human field data sets can help us to understand data, because emotion and empathy are important, and we need to think that when we are in front of data, in front of a data visualization, we are emotional about it. So the problem here is that for many years, we learned to make data visualization with this kind of principle that Edward Taft wrote, that the data visualization needs to be minimalistic. So he also invented a metric for measuring the amount of superfluous information included in a chart. Decorative elements are, he associated them with messy feelings. Anyway, with feelings. According to Taft, putting feelings in the representation of data is unscientific, because we want to do emotional persuasion. The problem is that we are making a false link between emotion and reason, a false binary. And false binaries, author of Data Feminism says, they benefit the group that are already on the top. So the elite of white men. Thinking behind those false binaries will help us to be more inclusive, because emotions help us to read the charts, because we are emotional in front of data. This is something we have to deal with. We cannot think that only because there are numbers, people are not going to be emotional about it. They're not going to put in front of them their experience, their expectations. Think about all of the debate around the pandemic data. Even if we have numbers, it's something scientific, it's a medical sector. No, here we have our emotions coming up. If our friend or a member of our family got ill by COVID, we are even more emotional, even if we are in front of a spreadsheet. So to think about that is to think that we are involved with numbers, and if we put aside that, we risk to say that numbers are neutral, because they are minimalistic, and you see those charts very clean. So it's more dangerous to spread misinformation, for instance. In their book, the authors of Data Feminism talk about data visualization as a way to involve all our body to understand what data means. And I think this could help in create experiences about data that are more inclusive. Let's think about experiments of data physicalization. If we can touch data, if we can smell them, we use other senses other than the view, and we can have a better impact on the life of the people who deal with them. There are scientists and journalists experimenting with sound. For instance, Duncan Gear and Miriam Quick, they tried to experiment with sound and with music and create tracks about climate change, for instance. And they created this podcast where you can listen to data and listen to the process they made to combine data and sound. But also data physicalization can help communities at the margins to be part of the process of data collection, data analysis, and data representation. And this is also another principle of data feminism, because we don't simply go to a community, collect data and represent them, but we, as people with privilege, and privilege means also that we have the meaning to understand all these processes, but we involve them in those processes of collecting data. And participatory data physicalization are a way to be more accessible and inclusive. We also have to think that designing to be more inclusive means to be more accessible to everybody, not only to a specific group of people. This is very important, because we always think we have to do this for people who have a special disability. That can be the case, but it's not the only one. And it's very important to think more widely about how can we be more inclusive, because in the way we deal with data and data visualization can involve also, as this very interesting thread pointed out, we also involve race and patriarchy. This is something I invite you to think about, because before seeing this kind of this thread, this is something that happens when we deal with to bring accessibility, to be more inclusive, only thinking about a category of people, not thinking in an intersectional way, so thinking in a feminist way. If we embrace intersectionality in the way we use data, we are not gonna make those mistakes. so he makes some example of we could use more captions, summaries, real titles. This is something that all the people would benefit. Use ink. Don't do as Tafte asked to do when you design data visualization. Use a lot of ink, explain everything, use words. It's not a sin. It's something very useful for everybody, and this is inclusivity. Also think about how software can read those information you put. The more you explain, the more it would be complete for everybody. But also, and to finish my presentation, I want to say that just remember that we have to deal with bias in data, and when we talk about topics that relate to social justice, the approach of Mona Chalabi is one of the best. This interview I gave to you is goes way back, the publication of Data Feminist, but she has a data feminist approach because she draws all her visualizations to make them more warm, more full of emotions. People need to really understand the importance of the topic she is talking about, and just put the numbers behind bars or behind a line doesn't make them human. And if you don't make them human, you will not make an impact or a change in the way you visualize data. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Donata. It was a brilliant speech, truly inspiring. Let's see if we have any question for you. So, did you ever work with textual data analysis to analyze the language associated with diversity and inclusion? If not, do you know of any studies or project on the topic in Italy or Europe?
I haven't worked on this kind of project myself. I'm thinking about a project called Mapping Diversity, which is a project made by Sheldon Studio and EJNet, European Journalism Center, which aimed to analyze the streets of the capital cities of Italy, and to see how many of them were entitled to women or to men. The problem with text analysis is that I'm talking about this project because I talked with the people who made it, and it's very difficult to make a kind of this kind of analysis. It's basically manual work, especially with the Italian language, because the softwares are very good in detecting gender in the English language, not in the Italian one. So the person who did this project, one of the person who worked at this project told me that she really she cleaned like 6,000 rows of data by hand. So that's why we don't have so many projects about this, but it's very interesting, I know.
Great, thank you. Also, from what you said, really bring to mind what happened not so long time ago with Google and Timnit Gebru. I don't know if you
Yes,
you know what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, in coded bias, you have a story as well. Yeah. So even if there are women who point out the bias in algorithm, they are set aside, and this is something we have to talk about more, because I think that we cannot let data shape our world if we don't, without addressing those biases.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So we have another question for you, a provocative question. So as a psychologist dealing with data, I am very well aware of the bias in data collecting, and I thank you for bringing attention to this point. My provocative question is, in collecting data on women versus male, are we not neglecting all non-binary persons?
Sorry?
Transgenders and so on.
I didn't understand.
Are we not? Yeah, sorry. in collecting data on women versus male, are we not neglecting all non-binary persons?
Of course, we need to include non-binary persons, but also this is very interesting question. Is not something against the presentation I made, especially because thinking about intersectionality means also to think about all the people who are not represented. People, the problem is that non-binary people have been underrepresented. But also collecting data on that could mean also to discriminate them. So we always need to ask ourselves if it's better to have disaggregated data about sex, gender, and who is the authors of Data Feminist, they say that the question we need to make is the who is profiting, who is taking advantage of this kind of collection, who will be discriminated or oppressed by this kind of collection. So it's something we need to think about. It's important to have this kind of data for the solution of the problem, or to present this kind of problem to the world, or we are going to discriminate more if we point out that there are non-binary people in a place, for instance. There is no one answer. It depends on the context. It's the same also for race, for age. Asking the age when you want a person to apply for a job, for instance. Okay, you're collecting data, but is it discriminatory? This kind of question. So we need to ask. It's not an easy way to deal with data. The feminist approach.
Thank you so much for your answer. We have another question for you. So how can we be objective in front of data? Culture, politics, religion are all biases.
Yes, we cannot be objective. It's an impossible goal. We need to understand that there are some. We are drawn like everywhere that we have prejudice. We have our way of seeing reality. I always say that before becoming a mother, I didn't care at all about data on maternity leaves, or it wasn't something I was related to. And now I only see those kind of data and statistics, and I want to represent them. I want to tell them to the world, and I think they're very important. So I'm a living bias about that. And I think if we make it explicit, we are transparent about it, it can be helpful for our readership.
Thank you so much. So I don't think we have any other question for you. So Lenny, thank you again for joining us today. And again, brilliant speech. Thank you.
Thanks.
So have a great day. Thank you. So are we ready for our next speaker? Stretch your leg, grab a glass of water, and we will be back in a few minutes.